It always seems impossible until it is done. Nelson Mandela. Welcome to the Guyana Dialogue. I'm your hostess, Shamisa Ali. Good evening to everyone joining us on Facebook and YouTube. Our topic tonight is private sector views on budget 2023. The Guyana Dialogue is being sponsored by a coordinating council of Guyanese based in the US, UK, Canada, Guyana, and the Caribbean. Funding support is by well known philanthropist Dave Narayan from Dave Westinian Imports. Please welcome my moderator for tonight, Dr. Tara Singh.
Thank you, Shamisa. Welcome.
You're welcome, Dr. Tara. Our panelist is Professor Mahindra Hariraj.
Good night, Shamiz. Good night, Dr. Tara. Good night, Dave.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Good night. Our speaker tonight is Mr. Dave Narayan, and very shortly, Mr. Paul Cheong will be joining us. So for now, this is our team that we have coverage from. Dr. Tara.
Thank you very much. Good evening, viewers. Today we're going to focus on Budget 2023. Before I ask our guest, prominent businessman, Mr. Dave Narayan, Managing Director of Dave Import Group, I'd like to make some a few introductory comments. One, I just got a quote from the recent IMF report on Guyana, which commended the PP government effort to maintain financial stability and promote financial inclusion. Those are the exact words from the report issued last year. While noting at the same time that the all GDF is projected to grow by 36.8% in 2023 and the non-oil GDP at 7.9%, making it a total GDP growth of 25.2%. The IMF also commended the government to build resilience to climate change as envisioned under the Low Carbon Development Strategy 2030. With this type of commendation for a well-managed economy, the Senior Minister of Finance, Dr. Ashni Singh, presented the 781.9 billion budget 2023. This historic budget builds and is shaped by the National Development Strategy of 1994, the National Competitive Strategy of 2006, the Poverty Reduction Strategy started in the 90s, was revamped in 2011, and the various ministries' 5-year strategic plans, contemporary 5-year strategic plan. So it's very important that people get this background because they think that the government is just pulling data and programs out of the air. But these are living documents where the government consults on a regular basis. However, notwithstanding the foundation of this budget, that did not prevent the PNSR, like Mr. Roy Ford, from launching a bitter attack against the budget. We'll go into that, but I just want to set the stage now to invite one of our guest speakers here as a prominent businessman within our community and beyond to give his opening remarks and views, general views on the budget. Mr. Dave Narayan.
Thank you, panelists. I think it's an incredible budget. I think it's for each and every business, for the public sector, for the private sector, except for maybe the opposition leader. He seems not to be in par with the budget, but that's opposition always would say that. But the finance minister put out a budget there that would reach housing and would reach salary and would reach all the thing, hundreds of billions of dollars for infrastructure, etc. But so it's an incredible budget. And as we go into detail by sector, we'll talk more about it. If we're going to start with maybe increasing disposable income, and that was everybody was asking about 3 billion in salary adjustment benefiting 5,000 healthcare workers and 8,000 member of the discipline services with effect January 1st, 23. Income threshold increase in the monthly income tax threshold from 75,000 to 85 monthly, releasing a total of 3.3 billion into the hands of taxpayer and removing 12,000 taxpayer from the tax debt. These are incredible things for the growth of the country. Because we care grant is to be increased from 25,000 to 35,000. This will benefit over 214,000 school children in public and private school. The newly increased grant of 35,000 together with the uniform grant of 5,000 per child will see parents receive 40,000 per child in total. And the two grants together will amount to a transfer total of 8.6 billion being made to parents and school children. Let's start with that aspect. Go ahead, Dr. Tara.
Okay, thank you, Dave. I just want to make a quick point. The subsidy alone on energy was $17 billion. Now let me go over to Mahendra for his opening comments.
Sure, Dr. Taran. I think Dave is already off to a good start with respect to the foundation of the budget. I think budgets have to always be looked at holistically, and it is a critical document to sustain growth and to essentially pave the way for the country transformational agenda under the PPP administration. As Dave and you outlined, there are many significant measures in the budget that is to ensure the socioeconomic transformation of Guyana. One has to look at the budget holistically to fully understand and grasp what it's going to do for the common and ordinary man in Guyana. I think there is a huge divide and gap of reality from the opposition. And that is something that has been a theme in the opposition approach to many aspects of finance, mathematics, and so on. But when we look at a budget is the financial document that outlines the programmatic agenda policies, etc., for that fiscal year or for that year. And what we see here is a budget that balances two fundamental things for Guyana: meeting the current needs and also paving the way for the future sort of infrastructure and capital needs to to ensure that we are growing at the right particular organic pace. What I find here as a theme recurring, Dr. Tara and my panelists here, the
Mahindra,
the common sort of
Mahindra,
yes,
can I just have you hold that thought for just a
yeah,
second? Let's introduce
sure,
Mr. Chong is here.
sure.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Paul Cheong.
Uh, Thank you. Good evening. My apologies for joining late. We had a lot of engagement today.
Yeah, yeah, I was part of that. But thank you for being here, Paul. I know
Yeah,
you're very busy. We
Well,
come up here.
it's indeed a pleasure to be part of this program, and look forward to
Yeah,
making a valid contribution.
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Go ahead. Go
So,
ahead, Ma.
good evening, Mr. Paul Chung. So,
Good evening.
as I was saying, with respect to the opposition position on the budget, I think they don't understand the basics of socio-economic transformation or budgeting, because their perspective of crafting a budget is to just facilitate cash handouts, and that is not a sustainable approach. What you have to look at are the measures that meets the current sort of goals of Guyana, and also what is important for us to invest in for the future. You can't just simply give handouts. That is not sustainable, because a budget creates a foundation that you grow from and you leverage future periods on. So this sort of talking about poverty. I heard the opposition leader speaking about poverty eradication, and the budget lacks social sort of aspect. I think he hasn't read. He has not read the budget, or simply he does not understand how a budget functions, because there are so many social, economic policies and measures in this budget. Let's look at two fundamental areas very quickly: education and housing. That is to enhance the transformation of the normal Guyanese. And many of these sectors have spin off macroeconomic value. Look at the point that they've made about the cash, the because we care cash grant. The opposition removed that. So if they're talking about social benefit, that is putting back disposable income in the common household. Looking at the tax threshold moving from 75,000 to 85, that's a 13.33% increase essentially in the disposable income. So in my view, just not to go way beyond into the details, the budget fundamentally speaks to two major things. One, as Dr. Singh outlined in his budget speech, meeting the current needs of Guyana, but also importantly, setting that tone and foundation for the economic and social transformation of the country.
All right, thank you, Professor Mahin. We welcome Mr. Paul Cheong. You know, he is a chairman or head of the Private Sector Commission. He wears many hats. I think he just came back from India with the president, and he went on a field trip earlier today to Ruby, East Bank of Essequibo. Welcome, sir, and we'd like to have your general views, your opening remarks about the budget from a business perspective or from the PSC perspective.
Well, I mean, the budget we think is a wonderful budget. I mean, it speaks, as the previous speaker and Minister Ashley Singh spoke about, and also laying the foundation for future growth and development of our country and our people. We strongly feel that the budget is a excellent one, and it deals with all aspects, you know, of the economy, and it you know, it also deals with all the people in this country. This is a one Guyana budget, so we're happy that, you know, every sector is being taken care of, and you know, on all the every sector of the population also is being taken care of. So
can I just stop you a bit there? But the opposition leader said that the manufacturing sector wasn't taken care of in the budget. How do you respond to that?
Well, I think that, you know, this government, you know, the opposition, you know, I don't know sometimes, because sometimes they say that, you know, the government is just pro private sector, and then
right.
In another breath they say something different. They're not consistent. But one of the key issues for manufacturing, right? One of the key problem that they face is the cost of energy, and investing in the gas to show project and the generation, utilizing that gas, which would reduce electricity costs by 50% or more, you know, in a great way, would aid manufacturing. And not only the current manufacturing, but also make manufacturing for products that we can do in, and right now not profitable. It would make those products profitable, because I mean the cost of producing them would be reduced because of low energy costs, right? So yeah, I mean there's something in the budget for everyone. So we now receiving it immediately. Also, by the government not reducing the taxes on fuel right now, actually eliminating the excise tax on fuel, and a lot of the manufacturers, right now we have our own generation. We do our own generation, have our generator sets, and for still fuel, if you had to put on, if you had taxes on the diesel, your cost would have been higher. So that also aid manufacturers. The by not um, using the current freight rates in the computation of duty and utilizing the freight rates pre-COVID, which was much lower, is also a benefit to not only manufacturers but the entire business sector that does importation. As we know, I mean, all the manufacturers, we don't produce everything here in Guyana, and uh, many items, including packaging material and a few other ingredients used in the production process. I mean, if the duties are calculated on current freight rates, then your cost will go up.
Yeah,
So there are a number of things there to assist the local manufacturers. Yes.
yeah. Well, the freight relief is part of to deal with the rising inflation rate. I mean, the freight subsidy, the finance minister says that worth $6 billion. And
Right.
coming back quickly to the manufacturing sector, there are 11 agro processing separate activities or installation occurring last year, and 3 so far has been projected for this year. So I don't
Right.
understand why the opposition leader is complaining about not much for the manufacturing and agri sector. Well, there is, because I checked with the ministry and they confirm that they have 11 agri processing plants throughout the country and 3 scheduled. They may probably have more for the year. Let's focus a little more on the specific measures. I know it was on a big problem for them is really the inflation, and you mentioned already the freight reduction. You mentioned
The removal of tax from the
removal of
fuel.
tax. Yeah, and do you consider the employment of 11,000 people with part-time jobs as part of the effort to reduce inflation, or they separate? 11,000 part-time jobs.
Yeah, I know. I mean, that's, I mean, that's a big plus for the private sector, because it put a lot more disposable income into the hands of the Guyanese populace.
But does it help to reduce pressure on the cost of living? That's what I'm asking. The
But here now,
10,000.
I mean, the cost, I mean, price increase has to do with what's going on in the global arena. Now, we had price increases, and it's not isolated only to Guyana. Since since COVID, and we had and the war in between Ukraine and Russia, a lot of prices went up. But the government in Guyana have made some bold steps to
Okay.
help cushion the effect of those.
Let me ask Dave, and then I come to my hand review on that, on the cost of living. Dave, any comments on
The
that?
cost of living, it did cost of living increase all over the world, and especially in Guyana. We saw an increase in old age pension. Old age pension has increased from 28,000 to 33,000, placing an additional of 4.4 billion of disposable income into the hands of 73,000 pensioner, which is about 1/10 of the population. Public assistance will be increased from 14,000 monthly to 16,000, to the benefit of over 29,000 persons, placing an additional 700 million disposable income to the hands of these individuals. Cost of living has gone up quite a bit in Guyana. Um, but with no raise of taxes in this budget, we are hoping that the Guyanese at large were able to withstand what's happening. Of course, everyone would like to have a few dollars more in their pocket, but the government did an excellent job. Um, Wish everybody would say they would love to have a few more dollars, but that's it. The fact is that cost of living has gone up.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Professor Mayen.
Sure, Dr. Taran. Just to leverage on what Mr. Chong had said and what Dave is saying, Guyana is now immune to the global economy. And given that Guyana is now at the forefront of competing with other developing countries, cost of living is an issue across the globe. But I think what individuals and the normal, ordinary Guyanese man has to recognize is if you infuse additional reckless spending, it further exacerbates the cost of living crises and also pushes inflation further over the edge. So ensuring that there is prudent management and careful measures is equally important and not just spending carelessly. So when we talk about the cost of living, for example, giving handouts of cash and infusing more cash into the economy will naturally cause a more detrimental or have a more detrimental impact to cost of living and unemployment, etc. There are two fundamental things, Dr. Tara: demand pull and supply push inflation. If you give more money to individuals, they're going to buy more and it causes more, the price will go up and inflation is triggered. Suppliers push, the inputs have more costly input point, the output cost is more. So the right mixture and balance has to be examined carefully in this situation that you don't overheat the economy further, attribute more to the inflationary situation. In the United States, you find the government will employ contractuary policies, increase interest rates are, as we're seeing, cut social spending. In Guyana, on the other hand, we're seeing government is at the table making the debts, the access to loans more readily available for investment. It's putting a calculative approach to the social sectors. So when one look at this budget, you have to look at in the perspective that Guyana is not functioning as an isolated economy. It is functioning within the global context. So it is very important that one recognize the measures here and how it has been crafted in a very careful, methodical way so it does not exacerbate an already fragile global problem, which is inflation.
All right, thank you. Let's jump to another area. Some or the other, I don't know if you read Rosie Ford letter in his newspaper, I think it was Kaichor, where he's implying that to give out more contracts, you lay down the conditions for more corruption. He's linking the two. And I think that if you listen to the leader of the opposition, he's also suggesting corruption. As a matter of fact, Rosedale Ford actually said, I asked the people to restore back the anti-corruption PNC policy that they had. Whatever that is, I don't know. But that policy facilitated the CEO of GCOM to get a land on the Linden Highway, which can accommodate 100 house lots. They gifted him just before the election. You gotta ask yourself why. But then let's they forget about the value of this infrastructure, what it does. Let me just read something from Professor Randy Prasad. a lot of people tend to devalue the importance of infrastructure, especially road and all forms of transport. This is what Professor Randy wrote. He said a proper road, river, and air transportation network is critical to farm and to market cost reduction, food security, reduction of traveling costs to work and school, access to tourist leisure activities, facilities, access to healthcare, and the reduction of lost labor hours due to traffic delays. Better roads will also contribute to the reduction of traffic accidents and fatalities. Oh, they are not seeing this, they're just seeing corruption in the awards of contract. And a couple of days ago, Nigel Hughes says that the large contracts are only given to one section of the population, and without thinking, they're implying that there's favoritism in the award of contract, that they're not looking, and all these contracts are given an open competitive bid. They were evaluated by independent body, but yet these allegations are there. Now, Mr. Cheong, you are the private sector. How do you respond to this allegation of the PNC? Are you hearing me?
I think he's
Hello.
still, yeah.
No, I was muted. No, yeah, you hearing me now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
How you respond to that?
Yeah. Talk is cheap. I would say. I mean, you can say anything. I mean, they need to. They not just say it, but come out and give the evidence where that's happening. So, but we Guyana, we all know. I mean, who live here, who've been coming here. We have a deficit in infrastructure, right? I live across and on the West Demerara. I have to leave home between 6 and 6:30 in the morning to cross. I mean, if I go later, I mean, it's a nightmare, and it's a nightmare for many things, and we lose too many man hours lining up in traffic jam for a small population. And because the economy is doing well, many Guyanese now are owning vehicles, and which is something good, and we shouldn't be depriving them of that privilege. So to ease this situation, we have to build more roads, we have to build more bridges. We can't use the same system that we have with more vehicles. It is definitely congestion will occur, and that's what we're experiencing right now, because nothing happened for a number of years. So since 2020, a number of new roads have been built. The Eccles Mandela Avenue Road, and that's going on. I mean, it's there. It's easy traffic, but still not to the extent that it should. So I mean, the road is continuing. It has to. I mean, we can't continue, because I think if we want to develop the country, if we want people to have a comfortable life, we have to build the infrastructure to support that. So we in the private sector, I mean, it also affect businesses, because you to get your goods from one point to the next, I mean, it's a nightmare sometimes. So the improvement in infrastructure not only assists the citizen, but also businesses, and the ease in which we can do business in the country. So we fully, I mean, this is a no-brainer in our view of the private sector. The development of industry, and we fully support it.
Thank you. I just want to refer again to the recent IMF report, where they commended the PPC for its corruption policy, including the NRF provisions in the NRF Act. And the actual quotation says they're strengthening Guyana's anti-corruption framework and fiscal transparency and encourage continued progress on implementation of the recommendation provided by the extractive industries. Now, the corruption, I just want to make one final comment. If they talk about corruption, I always believe that the mother of corruption was trying to steal an election. But they're not talking about that is the core of corruption. When you steal the right, the fundamental inalienable right of an individual to exercise his franchise. So you want to make a quick comment there, Professor Mahin, and then Dave?
Sure. And just to quickly answer the two questions you asked leading up to that, with respect to Mr. Nigel Hughes on his analysis that is flawed with respect to a contract being awarded to specific classes of Guyanese, I think fundamentally, if you have one particular group that is qualified, enabled to bid for contracts, then it must naturally go to that person that is bidding for it. Contracts cannot be awarded to somebody who doesn't bid for it. Simple as that. Mm-hmm. With respect to Mr. Ford's contentions in the budget for infrastructure, I think it's a dangerous thing for someone with political aspirations to lead Guyana, because it shows the vision is lacking, even from a constructive criticism standpoint. Because if you do not make careful investment in infrastructure, capital investment, etc., how would you mobilize Guyana to the next level? Would you build something the day you want to use it? Logically, that does not happen. It doesn't make any sense. Their idea of infrastructure is what's falling apart at Durban Park. Their idea of stymieing the growth of the economy is using the one-seat majority at that point to kill the Amaila Falls project. So if the opposition leader was talking about manufacturing sector, if they had voted in a prudent way to support those measures, Guyana would have had cheaper electricity and would have been in a far better place now to be in a strong competitive nature.
Right.
With respect to corruption, as you said, the most fundamental corruption that the world witnessed is the attempt to steal an election. And I think the Guyanese people pronounced on their value for the PPP administration because they're in government and the persons that are crying wolf is in the opposition, and I think they're condemned there for a very long time.
All right, thank you. Dave?
Manner of stealing election, I happen to be an observer going to that election with AmCham, and I was in that Ashman building for a few days, and I was previewed to see what was happening, and I was doing some videos, and I was approaching Mingo and all these things. And first, I didn't know who was Mingo. I was going up to him and asking him why these folks opening the envelopes and so forth and things. So it was too much corruption, and they can't be saying that the election was not corrupted or stolen. And finally, it was done by the CCJ. The
All right,
final
thank
results.
you. Thank you. Let's move on to another major concern they're raising, poverty. You know, Professor Mahin spoke about that briefly. And I think that Mr. Paul Cheong also spoke about some measures to reduce poverty. I think Dave as well. Now, it has been what the opposition has been saying. The IMF report, not the IMF, the World Bank, says Guyana has a poverty level of 48%. That is based on the revised minimum of $5.50 per day. Before that, it was $2.15 per day. Now, they are blaming the PP for that because the report came out in 2022, but the data that they used was 2019 during the PNC term.
That's correct.
So that was a figure attributed to them. But notwithstanding, in 1988, when the PNC was still in charge, a consultant named Boyd did a survey, poverty, and he found 65% of the people live in poverty. When the PP took office in 1992, by 1999, that was reduced to 38%. They continue to reduce it to about 32% based on the whole. So what I'm saying is that poverty did not start with it. They're implying that poverty started or created by the PP, when in fact it was created by the PNC. And PP had to neutralize it. And they're arguing that PP should have done a survey of poverty first. But why you need to do a survey? The census will capture those people who live in below the 550. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel. But the PP knows where the poverty pockets are. And they go and they do the outreach on a regular basis and serve those communities like Tiger Bay, for example, in Georgetown. Many of those people were moved out from there and sent to Parfait Harmony. Mr. Paul Cheong should know that.
Yeah.
So so what I'm saying, the people is well aware of the pockets of poverty, and they are trying to address them one by one. The president went up to the highway, and he's trying now to regularize their settlement, etc. A lot of these people do live in poverty, but their problems are being addressed, and I don't see why you can really criticize the government to any great degree. They regularize over 6 settlements with illegal people who you can classify as poverty-stricken people last year. They also created 44 new housing schemes to help people to get houses, house lots, etc. But we can talk about that in another section, but let's hear you all comment on this poverty. I'll come back to you, Justin Mahendra. Let's go to Mr. Paul Cheong, then Dave, then you.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Singh. As you rightly said, that document from the World Bank was dated 2019. The situation now is far different. Far different. I mean, we as I said, told you just now, we went to Ruby Back Dam, then we went to Tushin, and we were also in Parfait Harmony. And for people there, you know, they're not crying out for jobs. They want the roads fixed and other stuff, because there's so much opportunity now because of the increased economic activity in the country through the infrastructure work, through what we've seen, I mean, is a lot of the growth in the non-oil sector when you look at the budget too. So when you look at the performance for 2022. So with increased activity, definitely, I mean, more persons are being employed. And you know, we speak to many of our private sector companies, and they're looking for employees. One person told me this one, he needs 50 employees immediately, right? If anyone can identify persons, he'll employ them right away. And that's not only for one company. Many companies, they need employees. You know, it's hard to get the full complement of employees right now because of the increased economic activity, increased employment opportunities, and also helping those mothers and other persons who are home, the part-time jobs. That's also helping. I mean, 40,000 a month might sound small, but it's an added income to what the household was getting before, and it's not a job that for particularly those who got to take care of their kids and so on. It's not that strategic because it's for 10 days. So all of those programs and are helping to change the poverty line. Right. So that we've also spoke about the increase in old age pension, and the increase in and from time to time the government has been making intervention in particular areas where like last year, the reverend communities where people are vulnerable to different environmental or other impacts. I mean, the government, the fisher folks who were going through a rough time, the government did give them some assistance. The
All right.
assistance, right? So there are many
Thank you,
interventions to help
Dave.
with those that are in the poverty line or more below. So
All
it's
right.
not this.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Dave.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't want to say much more that Mr. Paul Cheong said because he said it all. Guyana did suffer in the early 80s and 90s with foreign exchange and growth of the country, and it remained with it remained what I said just with the agriculture sector, but with all these new finding with oil and all the agriculture sector now booming, there will be all these things now. The poverty level will climb up, and we're hoping for the best. It's already climbing up, so that's it.
All right.
Yeah, Dr. Taran, Mrs. Paul Chung, and Dave, not to digress from the budget talks, but the PPP administration inherited a mess from the inception from a very long time. And these repairs takes time. And if we want to measure a period of the 5 years that the coalition had to eradicate poverty as they are coining it, they failed miserably at that. So where we are in 2023 budget is the restoration of certain measures to address those issues. But poverty is not something you resolve overnight, because if that is the case, the world would have been an utopia. So Guyana and the government, in particular in budget 2023, there are measures there that is addressing that poverty issue. But that is something that is going to require time, careful investment. And the transformation, the social transformation is happening. If you look at Guyana now compared to when the PNC was in power or APNU, there is night and day, or a night and day contrast. You can't even use the word comparison because it's totally dichotomous. So it is important to recognize that poverty, there are measures there to address it. It is going to require careful, strategic, a long-term plan. And that is why because we care cash grant, for example, has been reinstituted, the opposition took that away. If they are so bent on the eradication of poverty, you won't have dismissed 7,000 sugar workers, which have macroeconomic multiplier effect on the economy. So the budget 2023 is repairing damages from the immediate effects of the coalition government, but it's a hole that Guyana has been in because of the mismanagement coming pre-1990.
All right. Thank you. Just to let people know, the richest country in the world, America, the poverty level is 12.8%. So I always say in Guyana, in no country in the West, poverty will be eliminated. You can neutralize, you can reduce it, but you can't eliminate it. We got to live. That's an aspect of life. We have to live it. Let's come to they develop a new thing, a kind of philosophy, I would say, or ideology. They say that growth is not development. My position is that the PP combine both growth and development, which is equal the path to prosperity. That's how I will define it. Now, it's true that when you build houses, you say you have a growth in some percent, etc. But it's also development. You're giving the people a home to live. You're giving them drinking water, potable drinking water, etc. A whole set of that. So those are all development indicators. I can't see how you can criticize the government as not developing the country. In other words, they are focusing on growth as GDP is some percent. What do I have to get from that 7%, etc. So you have a lot of development indicators which we can talk about, like houses, for example. The government allocated 20,000 house lots so far, of which 16,000 is allocated to low-income families. And I'm sure a lot of people who classify under the poverty level might qualify for that as well. Because people who they regularize them, who are living in those areas, are poverty-stricken people. Many of them do get house lots. But what I'm saying is 80% of these house lots are given out to low-income people. And then the government has started to build houses for low and middle income and professional people as well. Last year, they built about 827 homes, and they are in construction stage. They got another 500 or 600, and they will continue to build. Those are development indicators. Now, what people don't consider as a development, and this is very important, infant mortality was 47 in every 1,000 live births in 1990. In last year, it dropped by almost 45% to 25 in every. Likewise, life expectancy, which was about 62 years, 62.3 in 1990, is now 71.59 years in 2022. Those are crucial indicators of development, of human development. I just brought this out, and potable water, for example. When the PNC left power, 46% of hinterland had access to potable water. By this year, in less than 2.5 years, the PP was increased, the increase of household to 75%. And by 2025, they hope the entire 100% in hinterland would get potable water. In the coastland, they still have to do this water treatment plants. As we know, they give out several contracts. They recently give out contracts of $6 billion, and they still have some more to give out. So, but the plan is to get potable water to 90% of coastal households by 2025. That's another human development index, which is very important. We talk about house lots, houses, etc. We can go into healthcare with the building of 6 new hospitals and the specialty maternity and pediatric hospital at Ogle. These are all development indicators, not growth. Their growth, you can see their growth as well. But I said they are both, they're a combination of both. So if you want, let's go again to Paul, if you want to add anything to that or comment.
Yeah, I mean, the development is taking place. I mean, if we to focus on what the naysayers are doing, I keep telling people we let's not focus on negative, and focus on positive stuff. There's so much, I mean, is happening in Guyana, and as you said, the early indicators are showing, there are more opportunity for tertiary education, a lot more, through the Gold Scholarship. And this year, the government has budgeted even more. And when we were in India, we spoke to the universities there to, give us some more courses that we can have the Guyanese here studying. So there is all-round development. It is all-round development in Guyana. And now the healthcare system, a lot of money going to be spent on healthcare to develop it into a world-class health system. All of those things would aid for some better livelihood. The whole housing drive is that's improving people livelihood. Those who would be getting house lot, they increasing the ceiling for the low income homes. All of those, it will improve the quality of life.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Dave. Your comment.
I will change the topic here. I think one of the stuff the folks that were interested, everyone was looking at to see how much more vehicles will be reduced. The government did reduce VAT on the electric vehicle, and they reduced from 45% to 35% on the 1500cc. But I think many folks across Guyana, they were a little disappointed that they wanted a little more discount on vehicles, and I want to discuss that tonight a little. Well, we have a minute. Why can't we put a few percent more off that we can import a little newer vehicles so we don't have to buy parts and add that burden to the economy, to that U.S. cash and so forth? Dr. Taro.
So the vehicle, one of the problems you have is that the roads cannot accommodate the amount of vehicles right now. And you put duty on a particular product to help restrict the movement of that. And it could be that the government might think if you reduce the duty further, you might cause an influx of vehicles which the system cannot accommodate. So it's a type of a control measure. And so that's all I can say. I don't know what's the internal thinking, but I'm just speculating here that might have been the reason.
But the government will make more income on a newer vehicle. If on newer vehicle, instead of 100%, if they do a 75, a 65%, they'll make much more money, and it will be much more money in the economy, less strain on the economy.
Yeah, well, import duties is not only about raising money. It's to control the flow of goods as well. So you got to look at it from that perspective. If the government want to raise money, they're short, they can very well impose higher taxes, higher duties. So
There's already influx. There's already an influx of used vehicle in Guyana. You understand? So that's debatable. It's better safety feature.
I think
It's better safety feature.
They are encouraging some older type of vehicles to come in because that might meet the requirements of middle income and low income people. They don't want, if you allow the newer vehicles to come in, the people who can afford it, the middle income or upper income will get it. So it's a balancing act, and as a government, you got to think carefully. You just can't do things to satisfy one income group and forget the other income group. So if you're speaking about equity and fairness, you got to balance it. So these are, as I said, I can only speculate being outside.
Let me get
and I'm
Mr.
not-
Paul on that.
But I mean, I think that they want the 1500 cc. That's for new vehicles, reducing it to 5%. I mean, it is a big help for those and that's for new vehicles, right? I know that for the larger vehicles, the taxes on those are still high. And I during the course of time those will come down too, but the traffic congestion is a big problem. So I think they also try to push the more environmentally friendly vehicle with the battery cars being taken off the VAT from those. But again, it's a balancing act, no? In a budget. Because many times from the private sector we ask for stuff, and we recognize that they need to make certain decision based on the requirement for funding to the budget, and as against what
Mahin, Professor Mahin, your comments?
Well, not any major comments, but I think, as you said, maybe the deterrence of not having congested sort of roadways. And I think, Dave, if I were to preface this as to a reason, first you have to put the infrastructure in place to accommodate these new vehicles. And then the observation I will make is, who are the persons more likely, or what cross section of the population most likely to purchase new vehicles? So it is a balancing act. I think the government have to examine these things with data, have to, as I believe they are doing, putting in the right infrastructure to accommodate these vehicles in the near future. But then it's the evolution of the mindset as well, thinking about a green economy, thinking about fuel efficiency. As we know, Guyana is rich in oil resources, but oil is a depleting resources. So while we are focused on oil, we also have to think futuristic. We also have to think carefully as to how do we benefit people across the spectrum. So that is my comment on that regard.
Okay. All right. I think the final thing we should discuss, I think Professor Mahin touched upon that, is there's a strong pressure from the opposition for the government to give out cash grants, cash transfers. Now, your thoughts on that? What do you feel about cash transfers? Mr. Paul Cheong, how does the private sector see cash transfer? You're giving people, like the opposition say, you must give them 5,000 US per household, presumably per year. You hearing it? Your phone might be muted. Okay. Dave, can you hear?
Yeah, I could hear.
Yeah, well, how you feel about cash transfer?
I don't believe in it. I don't believe to give free money to the folks. You'll be just using it out, drink it out, and or whatever, sport it out. I don't believe in that. Give them in some other services, and give the same amount of money, but in some other services, and then the government is giving them.
You mean you favor conditional cash grants?
Right, but not in cash to do anything.
Yeah.
No.
Like if you get the money, they must use it to help pay the mortgage, build a house.
Exactly.
Education for
Do
the
that
children.
conditional cash, and right, but not just cash. It doesn't happen. I don't know how many countries it happens, and Guyana is not the richest country in the world. Guyana is now getting on its feet.
Well, Paul.
Yeah, I hear now. I mean, we get this oil, the money from the oil. I mean, we need to invest it to build a country that is sustainable with an economy that is sustainable. You know, if we take all the money and give it away, I mean, tomorrow, what happens? I mean, oil is a depletable resource. We need to invest in the infrastructure, one. Two, we need to invest in the people. And I believe it's better to teach someone to fish than, just give them a fish every day. They can help themselves. And that's why, we support the investment in education and particularly the higher education. So we can have a educated population, one that can contribute well to their own development and not depend on handouts. Definitely from the persons that are vulnerable, we need to assist from time to time. We can't leave them, just by the wayside. Yes, we agree, and I mean that's been happening since the government went in office in 2020. Had the COVID cash grant, and there are many other assistance that were done to help people when there's flood. You go and assist people. Well, but we need to build our economy, the sustainable part of agriculture, invest in agriculture. And one of the things we are talking about is horticulture, the planting of flowers. And if we can get the ladies who are home to do plant flowers in the yard and for us to sell. The Caribbean import a lot of flowers, flowers is big business. If you go, going to India, you see the amount of roses that they have all over the place. Such a beautiful thing. All of those are things that we can use the resources that we're getting from oil to invest in to help the people rather than just giving it out. And if we to give out the amount of money that they say, we're not even getting that amount of money from the oil, right? So,
yeah, that's correct, because right now we have 1.2 billion. If you give out 5,000 per household, that you need at least 1.5 billion. Now,
right.
Okay, Professor Mahin,
just quickly, Dr. Tara. Cash grant is not a sustainable measure. Just a simple analogy. Just think of a household. A father wins the lotto, and he distributes all of the money to his offspring. One time, when they come back the second time around, there's no money. It then result in problems. It result now in a failure for that household, and then it collapsed the entire structure. So applying that analogy to an economy, you have to make sure that there's resounding, sustainable investment where you're creating the infrastructure, the atmosphere that is conducive to maintain ongoing investment in your people. How do you do that? You just don't distribute cash. You create the environment for which they can flourish. Education saw $94.4 billion in the budget. Housing, $54.5 billion. Health, these are all critical areas of how the population benefit. Having a healthy population, they can mobilize working, putting in more hours, being more healthy, less reliance on spending money on doctors. Having a more educated population, they earn better pay, can understand that there's generation sort of creation of wealth. What is more rewarding than owning your own home? So all of these are fundamental things that transforms the individual. So reliance upon cash grant, I think it's a recipe for failure. It's important in some instances that you mobilize and stimulate a particular outcome, but that is not a policy that government can sustain in the long run. United States saw, or we're still seeing, the direct impact of the cash handouts that has triggered the inflationary situation here. Guyana is a smaller economy. Just think of the ramification if you just distribute cash like that. So these are things that has to be looked at context. You have to look at it from a prudent perspective, and you can't just trump up popular things for the population because you want to lower their votes, promising them $9,000 a bag for paddy. Where did that end up? Rice in jeopardy. Now the government is insulating other measures to rescue that sector. So measures has to be made that is prudent, that is sustainable, and you're creating the environment that stimulates productive outcome, multiplier effect scenarios.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I agree with you. You empower people not through handouts and cash grants, but through education, jobs, housing. Now, your concluding. No, I pass you on to our host, Shamisa.
Thank you, Dr. Tara. We will now go to Mr. Cheong for his closing remarks.
Is he
You're muted.
hearing? Mr. Paul Cheong, are you hearing?
All right.
Go to the Dave.
Mr. Narayan, if you can go ahead with your closing remarks.
Well, it was a golden opportunity to be here in the middle of some fine gentlemen and lady, and for a beautiful topic on budget and other topic. And I see it fit to expound on this topic. We wish we had much more time, and maybe we will continue this at another time. But once again, I want to say thanks to all the listeners and each and every one of you all.
Thank you, Mr. Narayan. And seems as if though we lost two of our guests for tonight. With that said, our program will now conclude. I would like to thank all our viewers for being here this evening, taking the time to spend with us here. The budget is one that has created history for Guyana, and I'm sure it will continue to be the talk for a while. With that note, thank you guys so much for being here. This is the Guyana Dialogue, and I'm your hostess, Shamisa Ali. Until next time, have a pleasant evening, everyone.
Good evening.